All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to Manor Lords, and welcome to part 4 of our tutorial slash beginner's guide series. Today we're going to be focusing on farming, and we're going to be doing this in the context of our existing settlement. Now we do have a little bit of prep work to do before we get to actually setting up farms, so if you're looking for that, I'll leave some timestamps down in the description. But for now, we're going to start off by preparing our existing settlement to sort of be left alone and be self-sufficient for a while. Now, there's a few things that I have done in order to accommodate this. The first one is that I have expanded our food production. You can see that we're getting a little bit low on food. We should be just fine because when spring comes, we're going to see a huge influx of food. But just to make sure that we are able to stay ahead of that, I've gone ahead and added another large vegetable plot. I've also set up 2 new burgage plots over here with large backyards, and those ones we're going to turn into orchards. Now, this is going to require us to invest in another development point, so we'll go ahead and pick that up. And orchards work very similarly to vegetable plots. The apples are another type of food that you can produce. They're produced at about the same rate. They do have a significant lead time, about 3 to 4 years before they start producing fully. But these 2 large plots should provide plenty of apples to be a food source for our community. Now, in addition to that, I've also increased the size of our flocks, and that's part of what's contributing to us having a little bit less food there, is that instead of butchering sheep for food, we are increasing our sheep count. At the end of our last episode, we had those set to 80, and I'm going to bump those up to 125, which I've done by going to our butcher shop and increasing the reserve limit there to 125, as well as on our livestock trading post. This is just going to make sure that we have plenty of meat production to satisfy our town and cover up against things like droughts, which a bad drought could greatly reduce how much we get from our fish pond, for example. So we want to have enough of our other foods that our town isn't going to starve if that happens. And that's where all of these sort of plans and changes come in. I've also expanded the town a little bit and set up many of the new houses with chicken coops, and that should help out a great deal. Now, in addition to stabilizing these food production places, I do want to make sure that we're prepared against overproduction, because that's certainly going to be an issue with such a rapid increase in food production. So what I've done is I've gone to my trading post and I've set up trading rules to export each of the types of food that we're producing if we get to 200 in excess. We currently have 56 families living in our town. I expect that to grow to about 60. And so this will make sure that if all of these are capped, we'll be able to provide for our town for a full year on our food supplies. But that even if we have a shortage in one, we should have plenty in the others, while at the same time preventing us from, for example, overproducing on apples and blocking the other food types from entering the granary. This will also help generate a little bit of revenue if we have some excess, and this should be just fine for us. We are presently on the last day of winter, so let's go ahead and jump forward into spring and establish our new town. All right, spring is here. We've collected our spring taxes, so we are up to 762 gold in our treasury. That'll be important in a little bit. We have 235 left in regional wealth, which is enough for us to build our 2 orchards. We'll go ahead and get those set up. We'll also expand the living spaces on both of those houses in order to make sure that once those apples grow and are ready for harvest, that there's plenty of people living there to help out with that. Last but not least, I'm going to set our tax rate to something a little bit more modest. I had them raised pretty high in order to generate some revenue there, but they don't need to be that high, especially with the increase in exports we're getting. We should have plenty of revenue. Now, I wanted to have more than 750 coins in the treasury because when we go to establish a new town, we do that in the construction tab under administration, and we'll choose a settlers camp. Now we need to choose where we want to build. And for this, we want to pick a region that has good fertility. And so you can see that the region we're currently in has lots of red and orange in it. So do all of these ones over here. This one has great fertility, but is held by Hildebolt at this time. This is one that we control, though, and has great fertility there. So we're going to go ahead and set up a settlers camp. And just as before, we'll need to sort of move through the very early game, set up some houses and some early industry, get up to a population of 10 or 12 before it's really reasonable to build our first farm. So we're going to move through that fairly quickly. We do have berries as the only rich resource patch here, so we'll set up near those so we can make use of that for early food and for early industry. Now, when we go to establish a settlement, we do have the choice of how many starting supplies we want to use. The modest is sort of the default start. We're going to go with plentiful here. This is going to cost 750 coins out of our treasury, but it's going to start with 60 pieces of food. That's a full year of food for 5 families, as well as 60 firewood, 60 stone, and 30 tools. We'll go ahead and select that. Now this is also going to start us off with 150 coins of regional wealth, which is going to be huge because it lets us do things like buy an extra oxen early on. So that's going to be the very first thing we do, is set up another hitching post and then order another oxen. And then we'll go ahead and set up some basic storage, houses, a logging camp, a hunting camp, and so on. All right, our basic settlement has been set up, and there's a few things we can go ahead and do. For example, setting up a vegetable patch in the backyard of one of our homes in order to generate some additional food there. We can also set up some new housing so our population can start growing. All right, our new settlement in Am Iberbach is doing well. We've expanded our number of houses to up to 10, and I think we're going to be pushing towards for around 12 right now. We're also starting to fill in our burgage plots, and there's a few other construction jobs that we want to get done, like setting up a church, so that we can start increasing our town level. Now, the goal for this settlement is to support some farms, and all the work of farming is done in the fall. So I'm going to try my best to get a farm established before September, so that we can jump straight into farming in year 1. It'll be at a smaller scale than we'll implement later, but that's okay. It'll let us take a look at the basics. Now, farms take up a fair bit of space, so we're going to go ahead and move away from our town center a little bit in order to establish this. And if we look at the region and pull up our fertility view, we can see that we're green pretty much everywhere for wheat. We do have some lower flax fertility in some spaces, but are still pretty good everywhere, and then same with barley fertility. So I think what we're going to do is actually move out towards this line. This will allow us to set up some farmland around this crossroads. And if we want to sell some of our goods, we'll have easy access to the trading post, and we're just down the main road from our primary settlement there. So we'll go ahead and get our farm established while our town continues to fill in. Now, farming is made of a farmhouse as well as some fields, so we can go ahead and set down our farmhouse in order to determine sort of the center point for our farm. Now, a single farmhouse can employ up to 8 workers, but it's actually a great deal more efficient to have fewer workers at the farmhouse than that. So I like to use 3 families per farmhouse, and so for that, we are going to go ahead and set up 3 burgage plots as well. And farm workers are actually great candidates for vegetable production because all of the work of farming is done in the fall. That means that through the spring and summer, the people who work at the farm can focus on tending their vegetable patch. So we're going to do a large backyard for a vegetable patch there. And then over here nearby, we're going to go ahead and set up a couple more houses with backyard extensions for housing the farm workers. Next up, we're going to want to go into our logistics panel and set up a hitching post nearby. This is going to be turned into a stable, and it's going to house 2 oxen to help us work the farm. Next, we need to lay down our field. And as we do this, we'll see that these fields are going to be measured in something called morgen. Now, in general, one family can work about 3/4 or 0.75 morgen per year. But there's a development point that we can take that'll just about double that. And so if we take that development point, a family can do about 1.5 morgen per year. And with 3 families, we can do about 4.5 morgen worth of fields and expect them to reasonably get through that or fairly close by the end of fall. Now, there are a variety of ways you can set up your fields, but I like to do several smaller fields. So I'm going to go ahead and set up 9 fields at about 0.5 morgen each. Some of them might be 0.4 or 0.6. But the idea is that we want a multiple of 3 in terms of number of fields. We want them to be as square as possible. We don't want long, skinny fields. And we want them generally to be as close to our farmhouse as reasonable. I'm going to leave some room right here at the crossroads so we can place in some additional buildings later on to process the sort of products of our farming. Let's see if we can do an interesting shaped one here. Generally, you don't want these irregular fields. They tend to be significantly less efficient for plowing, but we'll go ahead and give it a try here. We'll turn the backyard plot there into a vegetable garden. Our hitching post has been built here, so we'll go ahead and order another ox. All right, now with our basic farm established, there's one more thing we want to build, and that is a plowing station at our farm itself. So we're going to go ahead and go to our development points and spend our first development point into the heavy plow. That'll let us assign oxen to the farm and allow them to till the fields. And then we can go ahead and build that plowing station at the farm. All right, now as we get to the end of summer, the last thing we want to do to prepare our farm is to actually set up our fields with a crop rotation. Now each field can grow a few different crops, but as a crop grows in that field, the fertility for that crop is going to go down. So what we want to do is set up a crop rotation that'll allow us to cycle which crop is growing. That first year when we're growing wheat, we'll get a huge yield because it's got a high fertility rate, but it'll be cut in half that second year. And so we want to give it a chance to recover. And by doing a 3-crop rotation, we'll be producing plenty of each crop. Now, if you want to focus on a single crop type, it's appropriate to do, 2 years of a crop and then allow the field to lie fallow, which will allow it to rapidly regenerate its rotation. But then you can expect sort of a high yield bumper year, a lower yield year, and then a fallow year where it recovers. Since we're going to want all 3 of these to provide for our town, we can set up a 3-crop rotation, making sure that we have sort of an even split of which crops are going so that we have consistent production of the 3 different types of items. All right, and with those set up, we also want to make sure we have another oxen. Each farm can have up to 2 oxen assigned to it, so we are going to have 2 oxen in this stable once they have arrived, and those will be assigned to this farm. We can go ahead and go ahead and set both of those, so when our next oxen arrives, it will be assigned here as well. Now we are going to hold off on assigning any workers to the farmhouse until the beginning of fall, just to make sure that both we are getting the most out of their productivity elsewhere, and so that they don't start sowing a crop this season, because the season sort of resets at the beginning of fall. And so if they start working the fields now, then that's just going to be wasted effort. All right, fall is here, and so you can see we have some oxen who are out plowing the fields already. And I've gone ahead and assigned 3 families to the farmhouse. So what they're going to do is they're going to guide the oxen as they plow the fields. And then once the fields are plowed, they'll go out and start sowing the seeds there as well. Now, after our first year, they'll also need to harvest the crops. So we'll actually finish the work of the farm quite a bit early in this first year. Later on, we'll need to harvest the crops before the fields can be replowed and then sown. So it's actually going to take pretty much all of fall in order to work this amount of farmland. All right, as we move into our October, our settlement level has increased again, giving us another development point. And we're going to go ahead and spend that on orchardry. I want to talk at this point about which development points are going to be essential for farming. And for that, I'm going to say the heavy plow is the single most important. It dramatically increases the amount of land that your farmers can work and is hugely important. Beyond that, the 2 that are critical are going to be irrigation and bakeries. And I tend to favor irrigation early on. Irrigation will significantly lower the effect of droughts on your crops. A bad drought can significantly reduce your crop yields, and if you're relying on the bread that you're producing for your food source, this can be catastrophic. You can actually lose a settlement in this way. So I tend to favor irrigation early on for my farming communities because it greatly protects against that. And it's not just the food, it's also the clothing and the ale that you're producing that are impacted. So this sort of just buffers against that. The other one that's absolutely critical is bakeries, and this doubles your food yield. It allows you to create the bakery backyard extension, which produces 2 bread per flour instead of 1 bread per flour that is done in the community oven. And so this is another huge one. But because we're not relying on bread as our primary food source just yet, I'm okay leaving this until a little bit later when we have more development points. Some people choose to take that straight away and just ramp up that bread production for trade, and that's a perfectly reasonable way to do things as well. Orchardry, again, is just a very strong one, but since irrigation is locked behind it, we're going to go ahead and pick it up, and then once we have some regional wealth, we will go ahead and establish some backyard orchards in order to further sort of promote our food supply. All right, and our families have started sowing the fields. You can track the progress of a field through these icons at the bottom. The first one is plowing. We can see that this field is fully plowed and fully sown and now has a long growing period, which we expect to produce 39 barley, and then it'll need to be harvested next fall. And that's going to be true for each of the fields. So we can see that the families, as we get into the end of October and the beginning of November, are wrapping up sowing the last couple of fields. All right, and with our farms in place, our work with the farm itself is going to be done until next fall, at which point the families will come through, harvest the crops, thresh the wheat into grain, and then distribute them for further processing. Now, as winter sets in, we're going to move our attention to processing the results of our farmland. We have 3 crops, and each one represents a different production chain. Now, this region is going to have many farms, and so we're going to need some fairly extensive industry to sort of process the work of those. And as part of that, we're going to set up some granaries and storehouses. I'm going to create a granary and storehouse that will take the yields of this farm and probably 2 more. And so I'm going to go ahead and place those over here along this road, because I want to build our farmland sort of out along this King's Road. And we want our industry to be sort of centrally located. So we're going to be building that over here in this region. All right, now since this is a sort of agricultural granary, we're going to go ahead and disable all of our non-farm related items. So we'll go ahead and take the barley and the wheat. We'll leave rye on there, although I don't think we'll end up with any rye, but we'll also have grain, flour, and malt. All right, and with our storehouse and granary in place, we can go ahead and set up some further industry. And so in the farming tab, we can see a couple of buildings that'll process that wheat for us. The first one is a windmill, which we'll want to set up near our granary. Now the windmill will take grain and process it into flour. And then finally, we'll need a communal oven, which will take that flour and turn it into bread. All right, and the windmill and communal oven will handle the processing of our wheat crop, but there are 2 other crops we're producing, that is barley and flax, and these each have their own production chains as well. Now, the processing for these is going to be handled by buildings in the industry tab. The first one of these is a malt house, which will take barley and turn it into malt. Now, the malt can then be processed into ale at a brewery, which is a backyard extension. And so we may produce some ale here in a little bit as well. And the flax can be turned into linen at a weaver's workshop, which we can also set up right nearby. And this one we'll want to set up in our storehouse. Now, the storehouse, like the granary, will be a single purpose, so we're going to go ahead and allow flax to be stored there. We're also going to allow linen. Linen can actually be turned into clothes and then gambesons, which are a piece of military equipment. So we'll go ahead and allow each of those, but this is going to be a dedicated storehouse for that production chain. Now, of course, each of these buildings is going to require families to sort of work in them. So we're going to continue expanding our town and building more burgage plots as we go, as well as expanding our other food supplies. I'm also setting up a trading post so we can start generating some regional wealth and start constructing some orchards, as well as other backyard extensions to help provide for additional food variety. All right, with spring setting in, we've now been here a year, and I think it's a good chance for us to head back over to Eikenau and see how we're doing. And boy, do we seem to be doing well. We have plenty of food. Coming out of winter, we're already at 6 months of food. We have 2,400 units of regional wealth, and we can see that that's ballooning our treasury as well. Our orchards seem to be growing well. We even seem to be putting out some apples. So this fall, we may get our first apple crop, even if it's smaller than it might be at a later time. And so this town is doing well. Our pastures are full of sheep, and it does look like that is producing a huge amount of meat for us, as well as a large number of vegetables. So I think we are going to be doing just fine. We go ahead and take a look at trade. We can see that most of our trade revenue is still coming from sheep. We've actually sold 14 sheep, as well as a ton of wool and yarn. But as this town is still doing well, I think we can head back to Am Iberbach. And taking a look at our crop fields up close, we can see that they are all growing well. We have our large wheat field and then some flax behind it. Our vegetables off to the right. So this farmland is fertile, and it is going to be just the thing to provide for our town, and indeed for the entire region as we continue to expand. Now, of course, this one farm isn't going to be all we build, and so we can go ahead and take this spring and summer to expand our farming operation, building another farm just nearby. Now, for this one, I am going to draw some roads so that we have a little bit easier time moving items about. We're going to sort of skirt around the edge of this, and then we'll connect up to the King's Road over on this side there, as well as coming across to that. And this will create the basis for another new farm just here. So we can go ahead and set down another farmhouse. We can also set up another hitching post, as well as a bunch of new fields. All right. A band of raiders has been spotted near Hagenstieg, and they're going to move on our town at Eichenau. And that is some bad news. Fortunately, this is something we are well prepared for. We have plenty of funding, and of course, we could hire some mercenaries that could come in even through Eichenau itself to defend it. But instead of doing that, I want to demonstrate what happens if the raiders are allowed to come in. This may lead to some hard times for the region of Eichenau, but I do want to show off what happens if you can't muster a military in time. So I'm going to go ahead and keep the clock running while I go ahead and summon up some mercenaries here. And we'll let them sort of get into town a little bit and cause some ruckus and some damage. Now, this is going to hurt the town, but fortunately, at least at this time, the bandits don't do anything that's permanent, and this town is strong enough that I'm not very worried about it. So we're going to go ahead and let them come in. And then they have started setting fire to the town. So let's go ahead and now muster up those reinforcements. To come in and rescue the town. Now, these bandits are going to come through, set fire to the place, burn everything down until people come in, and we can see the city is burning, and it's terrible, and there's death and destruction. There is quite a bit of loss of product going on. They are raiding the settlements, but it does look like those bandits have been driven back, and so we can go ahead and disband our troops and take a look at the damage and devastation they caused. Now, there's a great deal of rubble here. Fortunately, rubble can be rebuilt for free. It doesn't cost any additional building materials to come back from this kind of damage. We do need to make sure we're going through and actually getting it all. So we'll check each of our buildings and see what's been sort of burned down and make sure it gets properly rebuilt. These burgage plots all seem okay. Over here, though, we did lose some burgage plots, so we'll go ahead and set those to rebuild. And again, this takes nothing but labor and time to rebuild from and recover from. So it's not that big of a deal to lose a few buildings in a raid like this. Obviously, it will hurt morale a bit, and until these houses are reconstructed, we're going to have some homelessness issues. So we'll go ahead and rebuild that. I think that's it. Take another quick glance around. And so that is what happens if the bandits are allowed to come into your town. And it is possible for them to burn the entire town. But again, with just a month or two of work, you can generally recover from that without too great of an issue. So even if that happens quite early on, it's not the end of the world. All right, and as we come to August, we're going to make sure that our farmhouses are both stocked with workers and that people are able to come out and start plowing the fields. We did get some livestock set up there as well as purchased for this stables. And so now as fall begins, we'll start harvesting the crops from our existing fields and then plowing and planting our new fields as well. All right, and we have an unfortunate effect that has happened. It has started raining during harvest season. See, when we harvest the crops, they get gathered up and left on the side of the field. They can be damaged here. Unfortunately, there's just nothing we can do about that, at least at this time. There's no way to prioritize moving the crops into the farmhouse and out of the rain. So that's just a little bit of loss there. It's an unfortunate part of it, but you can see that as soon as the fields are cleared, the oxen set to work plowing the fields, and once a field is plowed, it can start being planted again. All right, and as we move into October, some of our fields are still being plowed, others are starting to be planted. And each year we'll watch a little bit and make sure that we want to make sure we're finishing up towards the end of November. If we're finishing much sooner than that, then it means we probably can afford to build some more fields and expand our operation a little bit. If we aren't quite getting done, then it probably means we need to add some more workers to our farmhouses. Have a fourth family working at each farmhouse in order to just push us over that last little edge. All right, so right at the beginning of November is where we have sort of finished up farming. So we could actually probably expand these farms a little bit, maybe fill in this area with some more fields, as well as down here, maybe one more field of each type, just to make sure that we are maximizing the use of our farm labor in order to provide for our people there. Now, since these farmhouses are done, we can go ahead. We'll want to make sure that we leave some people assigned to them until all the wheat has been threshed into grain. But once all that wheat is gone, we can go ahead and assign workers from the farmhouses and assign them, and then temporarily assign them into our other tasks. So into our storehouses, into our weaver's workshop, our malt house, and our windmill and communal oven and granary. And that will make sure that those goods start to be processed into their final form. Now, the linen from our flax will satisfy a clothing need. The bread obviously is a food type, and the malts from our malt house can be processed into ale. But we don't actually need ale in this town just yet. And I think I want to probably double again the amount of farms we have before we start pushing into those later tiers of sort of settlement size and start building the tier 3 houses. But what we can do with that malt is go ahead and set up a trading post that will allow us to move it over to our other settlement, which will allow us to sort of resupply the beer to that region. Now, if we want to move goods between two regions, we need to set up a pack station. And a pack station can be in either one of the regions. So we probably want to pick the one that has more of a labor force, more free people to do the work. And so we're going to go ahead and do that over here in Eichenau. And the pack station is located in the tab. Once the pack station is built, we'll need to purchase a mule for it. So there's a regional wealth cost to it as well, which is another reason to do it here, because this region is tremendously wealthy, whereas Am-I-Brabach is a little bit less so. So we'll go ahead and purchase that pack station and assign a family, or purchase a mule for it and assign a family to it. And then what we can do is go into the advanced tab and choose our barter partner. We want to choose Am-I-Brabach, and now we need to choose goods that we can both send and receive. And we know that we want to receive malt. So we'll go ahead and select malt, but now we need to offer something back. Now, because we have a ample sort of leather working region, we could go ahead and send leather across to meet their clothing needs, and as well as for them to sort of sell as part of trade. We could send meat across if they were short on food, although that's the hope is that they're not. So let's go ahead and do leather. And what that means is that we should get 1.5 malts per leather that we send, and that's just going to sort of trade out. Now, malt by itself isn't very useful. It needs to be turned into ale by a brewery. So we can go ahead and set up a brewery extension at one of our larger houses here. And that will allow the supply of ale to once again begin flowing to the people of Eichenau. Now, brewers will actually take 1 malt and turn it into 2 ale. So this is a place where we can sort of choose where that production step happens. If we set up the brewery over in Am-I-Brabach, then we would be able to trade it for a significantly larger number of goods coming out of Eichenau, and vice versa. By sending over the malts, we aren't actually sending very much back to Am-I-Brabach, because Eichenau will handle that processing for a song. All right, and if we take a look at our brewery, we can see that we have both some malts coming in and that those are being processed into ale to be distributed by our tavern, which is once again starting to supply some homes here in the town. So our farming community is up and running and doing great. If we head back to Am Iberbach, we can take a look at our resources here, and we can see we have just food for days. We're getting tons and tons of bread over in our crafting materials. We're also getting a great deal of linen, and then of course the grain flour and malt are still being processed as well. Now we'll want to continue expanding our population here, so we don't need to be shuffling workers around. But otherwise, this is looking like a very successful sort of farming community here. All right, it looks like we have upgraded enough of our homes that Am Iberbach has grown to level 3, and so now we can go ahead and take a look at that final development point. And again, I'm going to put that into irrigation. This is just a buffer against drought. It'll make sure that our farms continue to produce well. Our 4th development point, when we're ready for it, will go into bakery, so we can double the amount of bread we're producing. And then our 5th and 6th, we can choose to either invest in sheep breeding and fertilization to allow us to make better use of fallow fields, as well as use fields for pasture land, or we could choose to go into something like beekeeping to provide additional types of honey. We could also, of course, go into trade, although I think Am Iberbach is mostly going to be a supplier, and we aren't going to be purchasing a whole lot of goods. We'll rely on our other regions that we can trade food. We'll be able to trade food to other regions in exchange for what we need. So I'm not thinking we're going to be investing too much in trade or in industry, but we may. But I think we may play around with beekeeping and forest management. All right, and with a renewed supply of ale coming into Eichenau, I think we are going to round out today by actually pushing this to the large town level, the level 6 town, which will meet the victory conditions of the game. You can see we're at 12 level 3 burgage plots. We need 15 more, but if we go to our large tavern, we are supplying way more than that with ale, so we can go ahead and take some of those burgage plots and upgrade them. And when those are done, that will meet the victory conditions of the game. Of course, we have more work to do. We have several more regions to sort of settle in, and we still need to push out Hildebolt. So we will be focusing on that in the next video, which is building up the industry to support, and then fielding a military to claim territory from a rival. So I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I hope you have found this video helpful. Leave a like if you have, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. My name is Dakoba, and I hope you have an epic day. I'll see you soon.